that's an idea. Now that's an idea. Now that's an idea.
And hello, and welcome to another episode of Now That's an Idea. Thank you so much for coming on this journey with me so far. We're on week 5. Can you believe it? I hope you're enjoying the show so far. I loved talking to Dana Daro last week. She ran the exhibition down at the marina. Going forward, I'd actually love to hear from you, audience. Any organisation you think should be featured in the show? Any good ideas out there? I'm thinking economics, conservation. If you know someone with a good idea, or that's doing something amazing, let me know on Instagram or Facebook or whatever you choose. But for now, let's jump into this week's show. Well, thank you so much for being on Now That's an Idea. Today I'm joined by Ora Barlow from Raukūmara Pae Maunga, the organisation which has just been awarded $6 million from the government into the iwi-led conservation initiative. So I think we could start with a congratulations. Was this expected, getting this money coming in, or was it a bit of a wonderful surprise?
Yes, well, kia ora. It's been a piece of negotiation and relationship discussions in regards to how we can best serve our national nature, but the investment that the Minister announced has been a piece that we've been talking about for a number of months now. So we're super happy that he was able to make that announcement and come up. And it really is a contribution to the total investment that we use for Raukūmara Pae Maunga, because as you can imagine, it's quite a large-scale operation that we do.
Yeah, can you maybe put into perspective what that scale is? Because the coast is kind of large and unwieldy, and there's actually not many roads and stuff going through there. So what's the scale of what we're talking here?
Yes, well, like you say, one road in, one road out. That's pretty much how the coast operates physically and mentally, I think. But we currently protect about 130,000 hectares of native forest, and that's across a large-scale complex operations of aerial 1080, ungulate, which is their goat control. And then on top of that, or as part of that, there's another 3,000 hectares of land pest control that we do as well, and then monitoring, and then community and engagement. So we work with our community really strongly within our schools and also across the landscape. So pretty significant ecological and cultural restoration initiative that really embodies the aspirations of the whānau and Ngāti Porou on a landscape scale.
Yeah. So how and when did this start? Because I feel kind of shameful there. I hadn't actually heard of this initiative before, but I imagine there's a lot of mahi, a lot of time and effort has gone into this over many years. But yeah, how did this start? And yeah, I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah, well, we have been so many great iwi practitioners and taiao practitioners within our iwi spaces has been really calling out the alarm of the decline and the degradation of the Raukūmara. And in actual fact, you could probably say that for a large part of our native forest, and particularly the North Island, but certainly across the country. And so some really great whānau members like the Brookings and the McClutchies and people like Graham Atkins on the Ngāti Porou side, the Tui Warmanhovens, the Ray Koheres, the Selwyn Parata, like incredible iwi leaders as well as taiao practitioners. And then on the Te Whānau side, the Willie Ngāmukis and the Rob Whitbournes and the Wharepapas and so many families and so many people have been saying that things are not well. And of course, the Raukūmara hadn't received any large-scale or any pest control really of any significance for over and above at least 35 years within the Department of Conservation's lifetime, and certainly 75 years when ungulate and possums first entered into Raukūmara country. So you can imagine the scale of degradation that's been occurring in that, with the forest being eaten from the inside out. So from all of those good peoples, there's been these layers of time episodes where people have been sounding the alarm, including people that are monitoring within the department. And so in 2019, Honourable Eugenie Sage came to Raukūmara by invitation. from Ngāti Porou, and she took a number of iwi leaders with her and looked at the Raukūmara and saw the severe degradation. Near ecological collapse, really, is what we're looking at after all of that neglect. So from that perspective, then she asked both iwi to put in a application for funding, which we did in 2019. And then, of course, 2020, Jobs for Nature landed. And from that fund came the North Island Forest Bid, which was Raukūmara and the Kaimai Mamapu. And we received significant funding. So Raukūmara Pae Maunga received 34.4 million from the Jobs for Nature Fund. And through that fund, we essentially built an immense workforce. So we trained up our own people. We looked after significant engagement with our people, what it is that our people needed, but also what it is that our forests needed. And from those really significant shared visioning, we essentially built Raukūmara Pae Maunga, which is now the largest indigenous-led aerial 1080 operation in the country, and certainly the largest operation in the North Island, and the largest, again, indigenous-led ungulate control, deer control program in the country, and certainly within the North Island. So very significant revitalisation of people and country.
So you said it started with 34 million. So it's 6 million over 3 years. Is that kind of enough just to keep it going, or is it kind of substantial now that it's like a running operation?
Look, I would say that it is significant relationship offering, and in terms of just a recognition of Raukūmara Pae Maunga per se, given that this current coalition is really rescaling how they budget nature and across public sectors as well. So it is a part of the total investment in which we need, but certainly an important contribution.
Yeah, I was going to say, it must be, you must be doing pretty amazing work if this coalition government that's not exactly in the media being someone that's supporting a lot of te ao Māori things or like conservation work to be coming out and giving you guys 6 million kind of speaks volumes. I think that you must be doing bloody good work if they're going to, support you guys in this kind of very fiscally trying times.
Look, and thank you for that. I think it really shows that this funding is this very long-deserved formal recognition of Raukūmara's ecological and cultural significance. And, as you kind of mentioned in your introduction, like our area, our remoteness, the scale, the biodiversity and the cultural richness that we are in Tairāwhiti as well as on the other side, on the Whānau Toi Moana side, is something that is not seen elsewhere in the North Island particularly, because the Raukūmara is the last of the most significant large-scale mountain-to-sea contiguous forest of its kind left in the North Island. So it is really special. It's special locally, regionally and nationally, and we think internationally, being its indigenous-led component as well as the kind of scale in which we're operating at.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I personally go traveling around the coast or like up to Waikere Moana or like up around the East Cape, you just think, wow, this is like so untouched. And it's like the blessing and the curse of being on the East Coast is you're like, thank God no one else is here because they'll just ruin it. But then you go, oh, I don't want to be like, Queenstown or Rotorua where they just get inundated. But then at the same time, you think, could a little bit more attention and tourist dollars and stuff might not be a bad thing. So is that maybe where a little bit of the vision is going, like having it into this kind of sustainable, ecological place that people might be able to come to and generate work for local people in a kind of sustainable way that fits with the kaupapa?
Yeah, I think that's a really good descriptor of it as. And I mean, in some ways we have this very, just going back to your statement about untouched, we almost have this nostalgic version of our nature that it's somehow kind of a Lord of the Rings elf roaming through it. It's untouched, it's wild, it's wilderness, but what's behind the scenes or what's under the canopy even is that it's been eaten. And we see that through the sedimentation that comes down our riverways and out to our seas. We see that in the severe log jams that come when we have significant weather events. So we know that there's a very significant problem with our nature and the state and the health of our nature. So going back to your point about what our vision is really to see a thriving taiao, and really because we think that this nexus of our incredible specialness within our region, the cultural revitalization and connection to this mountain to ocean ecosystems is really important. There's our own people's experience of that land. There's potentially the visitor experience, but also like the climate change resilience that we're wanting to build. Because I think Niwa once said or have said that a healthy forest holds 30 to 50% more sediment than an unhealthy forest. And so there's a real opportunity to create another kind of weather resilience in these very trying climate times. And then, of course, we've got the research component that we do with Raukūmara Pae Maunga, the rangatahi and youth development that we do within our schools, programs that we run, as well as employing young people to mentor them into this space, the training development that we do. All of these things are a nexus across our isolated remote communities. And so it's a holistic vision, really, that land and people are intrinsically intertwined. And so the health of the people is intrinsically intertwined with the health of the land, and vice versa. Unwellness of the people is intrinsically linked with the unwellness of the land. And so we want to really restore and uplift our community.
How did you get involved in this project? How did you get into this role, and how do you kind of get through the murky waters sometimes of decision making?
Yes, I think I've just been extraordinarily lucky. I returned back home after schooling down the coast. I live on the Te Kaha side, so Te Whānaupunui, but I whakapapa to Ngāti Porou as well. But I lived my life on Te Whānaupunui. And so I've always been a community-based kind of a person, and love community organising and doing all those sorts of things. So involved with my own community, with my own whānau, as well as having had the opportunity to do a lot of traveling. And so when I returned back home in 2004, it was really just finding my iwi feet, as it were. And when you come home after being away, you kind of have to keep silent for about 10 or 12 years, I reckon. Just kind of understand the lay of the land and know that you're just a pep, amongst giants that sit in various different iwi leadership forums. So you watch and you learn, and then probably in 2016 is when my involvement really kind of dug into nature restoration and seeing the absolute degradation of our forests through looking at what was coming down our rivers and understanding that it was impacting on us as sea people. And in actual fact, traditionally we've been mountain people. And our people from 800 years plus hold this legacy of having travelled through the Raukūmara and seen it as a significant garden, a significant place where Te Whānaupunui Ngāti Porou met and loved, met and made war, met and was healed after war. And so significantly, this intimate connection established over these 800 plus years is the cultural legacy in which I sit from and come from. And just feel so incredibly blessed for that. And then I'm just a community organizer really at heart. So you kind of just need to know how to weave everything in play, and just happen to be in the right places with a little bit of the gift of the gab, and don't get too much into trouble with my iwi. Occasionally I do. But that's all just part and parcel of, living the life along the coast.
Yeah.
So now I sit with, sort of really part of the formation and the creation. So there's a number of us as founders of Raukūmara Pae Maunga that are still involved in all of our governance, some of those founders. And so I'm sitting now in governance and helping to guide this big ship called the Raukūmara Pae Maunga.
Yeah, what a ship it's going to be. So What's the future vision? I know it's obviously like a massive job, but there's, small tasks along the way. There, I don't know. Yeah, is there a kind of final vision, or does it kind of evolve over time, or is it just kind of last forever? I guess, like looking after this huge piece of land.
Yeah. Look, I think that nature work will never end because we're actually looking at a significant problem. And it's interesting, the state of environment report that comes out from Ministry of Environment every 3 or 5 years, I think it is. And the last one just came out earlier this year. And it said essentially that our nature is significantly trending downwards. And out of the 30% of land of native forest cover left on throughout the whole country, all of it is significantly trending downwards. And so what we've really got is this irony, because we live in a country that is highly regarded, internationally regarded for its nature, and it's our second biggest export in the country, and yet it's the most insignificant sector of funding that gets any restoration support. So the future of this is for Pae Maunga is to really build the reputation of iwi-led restoration. Like, Indigenous peoples sit in the nexus of being some of the biggest leaders in restoration across the globe. And so we want to really restore people, planet, and the possibility that at place really can do this work. And it's not a encounter to what other agencies are doing, it's just an and an and. And so our vision is really to develop this shared vision of restoring nature, uplifting community, and people at place can actually do mana whenua, tangata whenua, can do some incredible work and are already doing incredible work. So we called as an example of that, we called a symposium just this week called Kahui Tai Ao Tūroa, and sort of the korowai, the cloak of leadership of Tai Ao. And we pulled together just under 140 people practicing Māori practitioners in Tai Ao. Phenomenal, from top of the North Island down to Raukūmara, Stewart Island, coming together to discuss and share wisdom and kind of uplift us all in this space so that you can actually do the work that your nature requires you to do. Because often we get caught up a little bit in our own humanness, but it's to service our ngahere and to understand what she needs to restore her dignity, really, and recloak her in the proper way that she should be.
Yeah, I think a couple of things you touched on as well was, when we look at the forest, I think from like a very human lens, if we're coming from the city, like if we're in Auckland or even Gisborne or something like that, you can look at a large forest and go, "Oh, wow, it's like thriving and so green." But unless you actually know what a healthy forest looks like, you might not see like all the bird life or the insects thriving in them. What can seem like a healthy forest is actually like super sick. So yeah, I think
Mm.
you're right. It's important to look through a kind of a papatūānuku, like a forest kind of lens, to actually know what is a good forest.
Yeah, it's a really good point, and really part of the big work that we did prior to even having any money, which was really just to understand what was happening to our ngahere and to the Raukūmara. So, our people, our kind of real leaders, community leaders within our space, and Tai leaders in our space, took our people into the Raukūmara to have a look. Took our old people into the Raukūmara to have a look so that we could understand what used to be from our pakeke and then what is now. Because if you don't have that comparison, for instance, we went into one of our kuras and we did this random kind of test, like bird song, and would play a bird song, and the kids would need to put up their hands and would identify what the bird was. And you'd play a sound and they go, was that just not sure. Oh, and tentative hands would sort of go up. And then you play a stag roar, and all the hands shoot up. And you
Mm.
play a possum cackle, all the hands go up, because our children and our young people are learning a new normal, which is not normal. And so we had to bring in our pakeke to understand what is really normal from their lifetime before, for some of them, before even deer came, or at the precipice of when deer were starting to get introduced into the Raukūmara. So that way then we could come to terms with the scale of the damage caused by all these invasive pests and predators. And that allows us to get people the saying, take the people to the mountain. And sometimes we kind of try to pull the mountain back, like what is kind of politically acceptable or human acceptable. We determine the tools of the trade of conservation. And instead of going, well, what does the Ngāhere really need? And what is the scale of the problem that we're dealing with so that we can match the scale of the solution? And so we walked the Raukūmara, the whānau brought, stories home to tell all of the community what was going on inside the Raukūmara. And it was stripped, and it's a very sad and very deeply painful space when you go into a forest and all you hear is the dry crackle of your boots on a very dry forest floor because the canopy is wide open from sunlight streaming through, being overbrowsed by possum. No understory because it's been eaten out by deer and goats, wild cattle. And so you've got none of that new generation coming through. And the old trees are falling because basically everything's hungry and starting to strip the bark and strip off all the leaves. And so we have a dying forest. So said we understand the problem and here we are and we're going to manifest the solution. Hence Raukūmara Pae Maunga was born.
Yeah, I think realizing what the forest used to be like is as it doesn't really exist anywhere in New Zealand or Aotearoa anymore. Like I know there's that famous quote in one of Captain Cook's diaries where they had to like park the ship extra far off land because they couldn't sleep because there were so many birds keeping them up. Like they're just trying to understand what Aotearoa was before the pests came. It's just it's having to reimagine what we even think of as like the bush here.
Yes. Yeah. And there's that great saying, isn't it something like the cacophony of sound was so immense that, like you said, they just couldn't sleep in the sheer volume of sound coming from our bush back then. And one of my very, dear cousins talked about how when he was a young boy, they were placed on different hills waiting for the dogs to come through during pig hunting. They're only like little 5-7-year-olds, as Papa comes through, sort of bringing in the dogs so that they're herding the pigs in. And he spoke about that they couldn't actually hear the dogs because the birds were so loud. And so, and that's only in the space of something like 60, or 50 odd years. And in that space now you walk in and you get thrilled if you see one kereru. And a kereru, if you know kereru, they should be in a flock because they're a community bird. So, you got to know what's normal and what's not right. And yeah, we want to reestablish that balance.
So how can I'm getting quite hyped up on this project, and I'm not even a part of it. But if can people get involved in any way? Is there kind of community participation, or can people just follow you guys and what the work you do?
Yes, well, there's a bunch of different ways. So we do a lot of community work in our community. So Ngāti Porou, that might be the closest one around you. So there's a lot of hapu iwi work that goes, but with community. So there's that space also within our schools. There's, of course, we have a website and we have a Facebook page, and that pumps every day. So it just shows what's going on in the fields. Just recently, part of the symposium that we ran, we took whānau up into our intensively managed site. It's about 3,000 hectares of trapping and new infrastructure that we're building there. Took them up the jet boat, to kind of just see that the scale, because you've got people, say, from Northland that have pockets of forest left and don't have that kind of an incredible, significant full forest types from subalpine to lowland coastal forest. So there's that space. Of course, we're always welcoming any form of donations, and then also just come and visit us. Like, really, come and visit us. Come in. We've got a Takaha office. We've got a Ruatoria office. Love to introduce you to the whānau. Just come and see us.
Now that's an idea.